81% of B2B buyers already have a preferred vendor before their first conversation with a sales rep. I want you to sit with that number for a second. 81%. That means the deal is being won or lost before your sales team even gets in the room, before the demo, before the proposal, before anyone picks up the phone. So the question becomes, when someone Googles you, your next hire, your next customer, your next investor, your next acquirer, what do they find? Is there a story? Is there a point of view? Is there evidence that you're a leader in your space? Or is there just a LinkedIn profile with a job title and a company bio? If the answer is not much, that's today's episode. I'm going to walk you through 4 case studies from tech CEOs I've worked with, show you the real data, and make the case that CEO visibility isn't a nice to have, it's the missing lever most tech companies ignore. Welcome to Cultivating Executive Presence, a podcast for leaders who must lead in public. I'm Justin Asiri, CEO of Executive Presence, and your guide to stepping into the visibility your company needs, even when it's the last thing you want to do. Every week, we'll explore the strategies, frameworks, and mindset shifts that help leaders build influence without losing integrity. From finding what to say to making peace with being seen, this is where reluctant leaders learn to lead out loud. So take a deep breath and let's get started. This is your first time listening. Welcome to Cultivating Executive Presence. I'm Justin Asiri. I run a company called Executive Presence. We work with tech CEOs and senior leaders on LinkedIn visibility. About 50% of the executives we work with are in the software space. That's SaaS, enterprise, consumer, healthcare, fintech, usually Series A through public company. We've done this with over 350 executives at this point, and the pattern I see is the same almost every time. These are smart, driven founders and CEOs. They've raised money. They've built products, they've hired teams, they invest obsessively in product, engineering, and go-to-market. But CEO visibility, that gets treated as an afterthought, something to address later, something for after the next fundraise, after the product launch, after the board meeting. There's always a reason to put it off. And honestly, that approach works for a while. Pre-Series A, your personal network is your distribution channel. You know every customer by name, warm intros close every deal. Your reputation travels through the people who already know you. I remember when I first started my company, I could reach every prospect with a warm intro or a direct email. At that stage, visibility doesn't matter. You are the distribution channel, your face, your handshake, your pitch, but there's a breaking point and it comes faster than most founders expect. It's the moment you need to reach people who don't already know you. The enterprise buyer who's never heard of your company, the VP of engineering you want to recruit from Google, the Series B investor who's doing due diligence before your first meeting, the journalist who's deciding whether you're worth covering, the acquirer who's building a short list. These people are going to look you up. That's not a theory. That's the 81% stat I opened with. If they find nothing, that's not neutral. It's negative. Silence creates doubt. Silence makes them wonder what's wrong. Silence sends them to the competitor who does have a narrative. So today, I'm going to do 3 things. I'm going to share the 3 mistakes I see tech CEOs make on LinkedIn. I'm going to walk through 4 mindset shifts that separate the leaders who build audiences from those who quit in month 3. And then I'm going to show you 4 real case studies with real before and after data. Let's start with the mistakes. 3 mistakes tech CEOs make. Mistake number 1, I'll post when we have news. This is by far the most common mistake I see. The CEO waits until there's a product launch or a funding announcement or a press release, and then they post about it and it gets 12 likes, maybe 20 if the marketing team rallies some internal engagement. And the CEO thinks, see, LinkedIn doesn't work. But that's not what happened. What happened is the algorithm doesn't know who you are. You haven't posted in months. You have no audience. You have no consistency. And then you show up with a press release and expect the world to pay attention. I had a CEO tell me once, we have posted our Series C announcement and got 40 likes. I asked him, how many posts did you make in the 3 months before that? The answer was 0. 0 posts and then a big announcement into the void. Compare that to one of my clients who's been posting consistently for 18 months before their funding announcement. Same stage company, 10 times the reach. LinkedIn's algorithm rewards consistency, not single events. It rewards people who show up every week. By the time you have a news worth sharing, you need the audience already built in. The distribution channel has to exist before the message matters. Think about it like a product launch. You wouldn't launch a product with zero marketing pipeline, but that's exactly what most CEOs do with their announcements. Mistake number two, our marketing team handles social. This one sounds reasonable on the surface. You have a marketing team, they manage the company's social channels. Why would the CEO need to do this separately? Here's why. Company pages earn a fraction of the reach of personal profiles. It's not even close. LinkedIn's own data shows that personal profiles get dramatically more engagement than brand pages, and 59% of decision makers say they prefer content from individual creators over brands. They want to hear from a person, not a logo. Your brand page cannot replicate what your voice can do. A company page posting a press release is background noise. A CEO sharing a genuine perspective on an industry trend, that stops the scroll. That gets shared, that gets remembered. Mistake number three, I don't have time for this. This is the one I hear the most, and it's the one I have the least patience for. Not because it's not a real constraint, of course time is scarce, but because the reframe is so clear. You don't have time not to do this. Right now, while your head's down building your company, your competitors' CEOs are building audiences. They're becoming the recognized voices in your category. They're the ones getting quoted. They're the ones candidates Google and feel excited about. They're the ones investors already know by the time the first meeting happens. And the actual time commitment can be as low as 30 minutes a month. That's it. Not a content calendar you manage yourself, not hours of writing and editing. 30 minutes of talking to a team that captures your voice and turns it into content. Every CEO in the case studies I'm about to share will tell you the same thing. They don't write their own posts. We'll come back to that. Okay, now the 4 mindset shifts. These come from working with over 250 software CEOs over the past several years. And these are the shifts that separate the leaders who build real, lasting audiences from the ones who try it for 3 months, don't see results, and quit. Shift number 1, product perspective. Most tech CEOs default to talking about their product on LinkedIn. Feature launches, technical capabilities, product comparisons, and I get the instinct. You've spent years building this thing. You're proud of it. You want the world to know about it. But here's the problem. Your LinkedIn audience doesn't care about your product the way you do. They don't care about your feature roadmap. One post trying to explain 3 technical differentiators just gets scrolled past. Newsletters are great for that kind of depth. LinkedIn is the venue. The rule we use across all of our clients: company promotion should be 20% or less of what you post. And even that 20% should be framed through the lens of something human and strategic, not we just launched feature X. Instead, the team story behind why you built it, the customer problem that drove it, the origin of the mission, why this matters to you personally. Perspective outperforms product every time across every executive we've studied. Shift number 2, pipeline to platform. Early stage founders think about LinkedIn as a sales channel. Will this post generate leads? That's the question they're asking every time they consider posting something. And I get it. Pipeline matters, revenue matters, especially when you're burning cash and you need to show traction. But if you're thinking about LinkedIn purely as a pipeline tool, you're thinking too small, because LinkedIn does 4 things simultaneously if you use it right. It's a hiring channel, key talent finds you, your LinkedIn presence becomes your highest converting recruiting tool, and I'm going to show you a case study that proves this in a few minutes. It's an investor channel. VCs research you before your first meeting every single time. Your narrative either builds the bull case for the investment or it leaves a vacuum, and vacuums don't work in your favor. It builds your brand. CEO thought leadership outlasts any single deal, any product launch, any funding round. The brand compounds, and it builds your story. A 12-month archive of consistent content is a narrative asset. When an acquirer, an analyst, or a journalist looks you up, they find a record of your thinking. That's not something you can manufacture in a weekend. So stop thinking about LinkedIn as a pipeline. Start thinking about it as your platform. The platform serves pipeline too, but it also serves every other strategic objective your company has. It's the one channel that compounds across every business function simultaneously. Shift number 3, who goes on stage? Here's the question I ask every company we work with. If you had a keynote slot in a room full of your target audience, your ideal buyers, your ideal hires, your ideal investors, who do you put on stage? That's the person who should be your brand ambassador on LinkedIn. And they need 3 things: experience, deep domain expertise that your audience genuinely respects, not just a title, earned credibility, network, existing connections that seed your initial reach and give early posts traction before the algorithm rewards you, and willingness, the genuine desire and organizational mandate to be the public face of the company and its mission. For most growth stage tech companies, that's the CEO or founder. But the question is worth asking explicitly, because if you put the wrong person out front, you get content no one trusts. And the wrong person is usually someone from marketing pretending to be the CEO. Shift number 4, authentic to strategic. Everyone in the LinkedIn advice world says be authentic. And look, authenticity matters. It's table stakes. If you're performing vulnerability for engagement, people can smell it. The sniff test is high, but authenticity alone is not a strategy. The real question is, what perception are you building? How do you want to be perceived in the market? What do you want your buyers, your hires, and your investors to believe about you before they ever meet you? Let me give you a real example. I work with a client who sells to healthcare executives, mainly 50-year-old male decision makers at hospitals and healthcare systems. He dropped out of college to start his company. That's an extremely credible founder story. The hustle, the grit, the unconventional path. But that's not the story we tell on LinkedIn, because the perception he needs with his buyer's audience is trustworthy, established, reliable, expert. Those are the attributes that make a 50-year-old hospital administrator comfortable signing a contract. The dropout story is authentic, but it's not strategic for his market. So we build content around his deep expertise, his industry insight, his relationships in the space. We tell authentic stories, but we choose which authentic stories to tell. Authenticity without strategy is a diary. Strategy without authenticity is marketing. You need both. Okay, 4 mindset shifts done. Now let me show you what this looks like in practice. 4 tech CEOs I've worked with, 4 different industries, 4 different strategic outcomes, and 1 common thread. I'm going to go through each one with real before and after data. These are all clients I've worked with for 2 to 4 years. The data is specific, the outcomes are measurable, and the pattern is repeatable. The first case study, I call this one the exit. For the last 2 years, I've worked with a software CEO, about 800 employees. He's backed by firms with over 100 billion in combined assets under management. He has deep domain expertise in healthcare IT. He was brought in by the sponsors specifically to scale the company towards an exit, and he has virtually no digital presence. When we started, we had posted 5 times in the last year with minimal traction. If you Googled him, you'd find a LinkedIn profile, maybe a company bio on the website. That's it. No articles, no interviews, no conference talks, no point of view anywhere on the internet. This is a CEO perfectly positioned for a landmark exit, but with absolutely no visible narrative to support the story. Now think about what that means in the context of an acquisition. When a Fortune 500 acquirer is doing due diligence, they're not just looking at the financials. They're looking at the leadership team. They're evaluating whether this CEO can lead through the transition, whether this person has relationships in the industry, whether the market trusts this leader. And if they Google the CEO and find a ghost, that's not zero, that's a risk factor. So here's what we did. Over 18 months, we built a consistent publishing cadence, started slow, built the voice, found the content mix that worked for his audience, which was mainly hospital executives, health system CTOs, and healthcare IT decision makers. 18 months later, and that has all changed. He's posting 20 times a month. That's 240 posts a year. His top posts are pulling 400 plus likes. He went from invisible to a recognized thought leader in healthcare IT. Then the company was acquired by a Fortune 500 company for over $2 billion. Now, did LinkedIn cause the acquisition? Of course not. The product was strong, the team was strong, the PE sponsors did their job, but here's what I want you to think about. When that acquisition was announced, it reached his entire industry because 2 years of consistent publishing had built the audience first. The announcement didn't create the audience. The audience was waiting for the announcement. And that's the key insight from this case study. I see this all the time. A CEO comes to us right before a big announcement, a fundraise, an acquisition, an IPO. They want the world to notice, but you can't build an audience at the moment you need one. The runway has to be laid first. Visibility isn't built at the moment of exit. It's built in the 24 months before anyone knows an exit is coming. That's the work. It happens long before the spotlight turns on. And if you're sitting here thinking, well, I'm not planning an exit, that's exactly the point. You don't know when you'll need the audience. You don't know when the inbound acquisition call will come. You don't know when the opportunity will materialize. The only thing you can control is whether the audience is there when it does. Second case study, the platform builder. And this one's my favorite because it's counterintuitive. I've worked with the CEO of an enterprise software company for about 4 years now. They've got about 5,000 employees. He took the company public while we were working together. Here's why this one is interesting. Before we started working together, this CEO was already active on LinkedIn. He was posting 18 times a month. That's way more than most executives. Most CEOs I meet post maybe once a month, if that. This guy was doing 18. So the challenge wasn't getting him to post. The challenge was getting him to be human. When we analyzed his content, 52% was industry commentary. Safe, professional, gettable. He was essentially a commentator, not a leader. He was telling people what was happening in his industry. He wasn't telling them who he was. There was no personal story, no vulnerability, no glimpse of the person behind the company. Every post read like it could have been written by any analyst in his space. And here's the thing about industry commentary. It does establish credibility. It's necessary as a foundation, but it doesn't build an audience. It doesn't create the kind of connection that makes someone remember you. When everything you post is a market take, you're competing with every analyst, every journalist, every other CEO who covers the same trends. There's nothing distinctive about it. So we shifted the mix. We moved from 52% industry commentary to a balanced approach across 4 pillars. We added leadership stories, personal reflections, stories about his journey as a founder, his values, what he learned from failures. And here's the counterintuitive part. He actually posted slightly less, 14 true originals a month instead of 18, but impressions went up 71%, engagement rate went up 52%. He was doing less and getting dramatically more. And the data on content type was clear. Personal content, stories about his journeys, values, life outside of work, drove 2.5 times the reach of his industry posts. 2.5 times. Think about what that means. The safe, professional industry commentary that most CEOs default to, it's the floor, not the ceiling. It establishes credibility, but it doesn't build reach. The personal stories are what multiply everything. And I think the reason is simple. When you share an industry take, people evaluate the idea. They might agree or disagree, but they're engaging with the concept. When you share a personal story, a failure, a lesson, something about your family or your values, people connect with you. They feel something, and that emotional connection is what makes them follow you, remember you, and think of you when opportunities arise. This CEO figured that out, and the timing couldn't have been better. He IPO'd at $6 billion. When analysts and institutional investors researched the company during the roadshow, they already knew who he was. His thought leadership had been building the narrative for years. He wasn't just a founder pitching a stock. He was a category authority. That's the compounding effect of visibility. Less content, better mix, dramatically better results. Third case study, the talent magnet. And this one reframes what most people think LinkedIn is for. I've worked with the CEO of an education technology company. 60 million raised, over 500 posts in 2 years, about 5 posts a week sustained. That's a significant commitment, and the data reflects it. The challenge for this CEO wasn't revenue, it wasn't fundraising, it wasn't talent. Every startup in edtech is competing for the same engineers, the same product managers, the same designers, and they're all posting the same content. We're hiring, great culture, exciting opportunity. It all sounds the same. It all gets ignored. He needed to stand out, not by posting more job listings, but by showing what it actually means to work at his company. What does the CEO believe? What does he value? What kind of leader is he? What kind of company is he building? What would it feel like to work there? Those are the questions candidates are actively asking when they research a company, and a "we're hiring" post doesn't answer any of them. His breakthrough came not from a recruiting post, it came from a polarizing leadership opinion. He posted "get rid of unlimited PTO" and got nearly 1,800 likes and 400 plus comments. Now think about why that worked. He didn't say "we're hiring." He took a strong stance on how companies should treat their employees, and that stance attracted people who agree with his philosophy, people who think that way, people who lead that way, people who want to work for a leader who says what he actually thinks. And the people who disagreed, they were never going to work there anyway. The post was always a filter. It attracted the right people and repelled the wrong ones faster than any recruiting funnel could. The numbers across his program tell the story. Comments per post went up 133%, and comments matter more than likes because they indicate real conversations, not passive scrolling. Quarterly engagement nearly doubled, growing from about 4,400 to over 8,300 total quarterly engagements, pounding steadily over 8 quarters. And here's the proof of the compound effect. When his 60 million fundraising announcement dropped, it earned over 500 likes. Compared that to about 50 likes for comparable announcements from CEOs without a built audience. 10 times the reach because the audience was already there. Distribution preceded the announcement. When candidates Google the CEO, they find a leader with a clear, unapologetic point of view, not a generic careers page, not a company press release. They find a human being who stands for something. And that's a recruiting advantage money can't buy. Content became his filter, his values became his brand, and his audience was built before the news that needed it. I want to pause on that for a second because it connects to the first case study. The exit CEO built an audience before the acquisition announcement. The talent magnet built an audience before the funding announcement. Same principle. Distribution has to precede the news. If you wait until you have something to announce, you've already lost. Last case study, the Evangelist. And I saved this one for last because it's the best example of the long game. I've worked with the founder of a software company for over 3 years, over 150 million raised, backed by major financial institutions, names you'd recognize, 30,000 users of the platform, over 600 posts in 4 years. Now, here's the challenge this founder faced. His industry is a very conservative industry. The buyers are financial advisors, wealth managers, insurance professionals. These are people who value trust, stability, and credentials above almost everything else. And here's a young founder trying to convince them to change how they work. How do you build credibility with an audience that's inherently skeptical of young technical founders? The answer, and this is the insight that changed everything, is you don't sell the product, you evangelize the mission. This founder's mission is making estate planning accessible to every family, not just wealthy families, every family. That's a mission that resonates on a human level. Everyone has a family. Everyone knows someone who's dealt with the chaos of not having an estate plan. When you hear that mission, you don't think about software features. You think about your parents, your kids, your own planning. That's the power of leading with mission instead of product. So instead of posting about product features and integrations and API documentation, he posts about why estate planning matters. He shares stories about families. He talks about the mission behind the company. He talks about his own journey as a founder, the struggles, the breakthroughs, the moments of doubt, what it means to build something that matters. He shares what fatherhood taught him about legacy. He shares what he learned from his own family's estate planning mistakes. The results over 4 years, average likes per post up 92%, comments per post up 120%, total quarterly engagement up 150%, all compounding consistently over 16 quarters. And here's the data point that proves the thesis. His highest performing content never mentions the product. A funding announcement, over 1,000 likes. The birth of his son, over 1,000 likes. A paternity leave reflection, over 1,000 likes. A team celebration, nearly 1,000 likes. The product posts, they perform fine, but the personal content and the mission-driven content outperform product content by a massive margin. Humanity outperforms product marketing every time. That's not an opinion. That's what the data shows across 4 years of posts. And when his major investors came in, they weren't just betting on the technology. They were betting on a founder who had already built a trusted audience, a founder whose LinkedIn presence was itself a signal of credibility. You're a conservative financial institution evaluating a young tech founder who is LinkedIn, and you find 4 years of consistent, thoughtful, mission driven content. Thousands of engaged followers in your industry. That tells you something. That tells you this person can build trust at scale. That was part of the due diligence story. The best founder content never mentions the product. It tells the story of why the company exists and lets the audience connect the dots. 4 case studies, 4 different industries, 4 different strategic outcomes: an exit, an IPO, a recruiting breakthrough, and a fundraise. What do all 4 have in common? One, consistency. All 4 posted 2 to 5 times per week for 12 months or more before seeing compound returns. There are no shortcuts here, no viral hacks, no magic formula, just showing up week after week after week. The ones who won are the ones who kept going when it felt like nothing was happening. 2, personal voice. None of them sound like a press release. None of them sound like a brand broadcasting. Every post sounds like a person talking. That's what connects. That's what builds trust. Human content outperforms institutional content on every metric. 3, company sponsored. This is important. None of these CEOs were doing this as a side hustle. This was a strategic initiative with resources behind it. Ghostwriting, content strategy, dedicated time on the calendar. The companies decided this was worth investing in, and they resourced it accordingly. Every CEO in these case studies will tell you the same thing. They don't write their own posts. They spend time with us or a company like us once a month on a voice capture call, and a professional team turns them into content that sounds exactly like them. That's the only way this works at consistency, the level required. 4, content match strategy. This is the one most people miss. Exit visibility, IPO positioning, talent attraction, mission evangelism. In each case, the content wasn't generic. It was deliberately designed to serve the business goal. The content mix for a CEO preparing for an exit looks different from a CEO trying to recruit engineers. And 5, company promotion was 20% or less of the content. The rest was perspective, culture, mission, and personal stories. Less product, more person, consistently across all 4. Let me break down the framework because this is the tactical takeaway. We use 4 content categories for tech CEOs, and the percentages matter. Industry thought leadership starts at about 40%. This is your credibility base, your point of view on where the market is going, your takes on industry trends, regulatory changes, competitive dynamics. This is what establishes you as someone worth listening to. It's necessary. But across every executive we've studied, it's never the highest performing category. It's the foundation, not the differentiator. Number 2 is leadership and career journey, usually about 30%. This is the trust builder, your story, your failures, the mistakes you've made, the lessons you've learned, the hard decisions you've faced. This is where people start to feel like they know you, and it's where their real engagement lives. Company promotion is about 20%. Team wins, milestones, culture, hiring announcements. I call these recruiting ads that don't look like recruiting ads. They're important, but they're the lowest performing category when you look at engagement, and they're what most CEOs default to. And lastly, work adjacent or personal. That's usually about 10%. Your values, your family, your hobbies, your life outside of the company. This is the smallest category, but it's the reach multiplier. Personal content drives 2.5 times the reach of industry content. It's the content that makes your industry posts travel further. It's the content that makes people feel like they're following a person, not a company. Every case study I just walked through maps to a strategic mix of these 4 pillars. The exit leaned heavily on industry thought leadership and company promotion because the goal was to position the CEO as a known quantity in healthcare IT before the M&A process began. The talent magnet emphasized leadership and career journey because strong opinions attracted the right candidates. The Evangelist integrated work-adjacent personal storytelling to humanize the mission and build trust with conservative buyers. The balance is deliberate. It's not random posting. It's content architecture and ensures everything you publish directly fuels your specific business objectives. Most CEOs I meet are over indexed on company promotion and industry commentary, the two categories that build the least engagement, and they're completely skipping the personal and leadership stories that actually build audiences. If you take nothing else from this episode, take this: more person, less product. That's the shift. And it all compounds. This is the part where I need to be honest with you, because it's also the part that makes most people quit. Months 1 through 3 feel like nothing is happening. Likes are low, reach is limited, you're publishing into the void. You're wondering why you're doing this. Every CEO I work with has this phase. It's normal, and it's where most people stop. Months 6 through 9, you can start to find your voice. Consistency creates momentum. The algorithm starts to recognize you as a real publisher, not a once-a-month poster. Your audience begins to grow. You start hearing, "I saw your posts," in conversations. Inbounds start to trickle. Month 12 and beyond is where it gets interesting. The flywheel spins, momentum drives inbound, hires come to you, investors already know who you are before the first meeting. Customers reference your content in sales conversations. The compound effect is now visible. And here's the thing that surprises most people. Once the flywheel is spinning, each post lands harder, even if you don't increase your posting volume. The platform builder case study showed this. He actually posted slightly less and got dramatically better results. That's not about gaming the algorithm. That's about having an audience that's invested in hearing from you. Every new follower amplifies every future post. That's compound interest applied to attention. All 4 case studies show the same curve. Different starting points, different timelines, same hockey stick. The pattern is identical. The exit CEO spent 18 months building the audience before the acquisition. The platform builder spent 4 years before the IPO. The talent magnet built for 2 years before the funding announcement that reached 10 times more people than his peers. The evangelist compounded for 4 years. None of them saw results in month 1. All of them saw results that exceeded their expectations by year 2. The CEOs who win aren't the ones who went viral once. They're the ones who showed up every single week for 12 months, for 18 months, for 4 years. That's the compound effect. So let me land the plane. If you're a tech CEO listening to this, here's the question I'd like to ask. If your biggest customer, your next board member, the VP of engineering you're trying to recruit, or the acquirer who's quietly evaluating your company, if any of them Googled you right now, what would they find? Would they find a leader with a clear point of view, a track record of thought leadership, evidence that you're the kind of person they want to work with, invest in, or buy from? Or would they find a LinkedIn profile with a job title and a company bio? Because here's what the data shows. The CEO who was invisible for a decade, he built an audience in 18 months and sold for $2 billion. The CEO who was posting too much of the wrong content, he posted less, mixed in personal stories, and IPO'd at $6 billion. The CEO who needed talent, he stopped posting job listings and started posting opinions, and his best hires came from the people who found him on LinkedIn. The CEO who needed trust, he evangelized his mission for 4 years and attracted $150 million from institutional investors who already knew his name. If the answer is not much, that's the visibility gap. And now you've seen the data on what happens when you close it. Same framework, 4 industries, all repeatable. And here's the part that I think matters most. None of this required the CEOs to become influencers. None of them went viral. None of them danced on camera or posted memes. They showed up as themselves. They shared their perspective. They told their story, and they did it consistently. That's not talent. That's a decision. And it's a decision you can make this week. The best time to start was a year ago. The second best time is this week. Thanks for listening. I'm Justin Asiri, and this is Cultivating Executive Presence.